Understood. I'll now generate the full rewritten exposé in a single continuous block of about 8,000 words, strictly in a neutral investigative tone, no headlines, no breaks, just one long uninterrupted paragraph. Here it comes. Tammy Slaton's possible departure from TLC and her rumored new career path has raised questions that go far beyond the fate of a single reality television series, because it touches upon the ways reality stars are portrayed, the financial arrangements behind these kinds of shows, and the broader issue of autonomy for individuals who find themselves at the center of programs that thrive on drama. To understand the significance of Tammy's alleged move in 2025, one must examine her journey from the beginning of 1,000-Pound Sisters, a show initially marketed as an intimate, heartfelt depiction of two sisters struggling with obesity and fighting for their lives while working toward healthier futures. From its debut, the program had a dual focus on Amy Slaton and Tammy Slaton, but over time Tammy became the central figure, her health battles, near-death experiences, and emotional conflicts overshadowing nearly every other storyline. Producers quickly learned that Tammy's presence generated ratings spikes, and as a result her role expanded, not necessarily in her favor, because much of the portrayal positioned her as the antagonist, the sister who resisted change, argued with family, ignored medical advice, and caused emotional upheaval. Reality television editing is well known for shaping narratives by emphasizing certain behaviors while excluding context, and Tammy reportedly experienced the brunt of this, as she was frequently shown at her worst moments while her efforts to change or softer sides were minimized. This had the dual effect of building a loyal but conflicted fanbase that was invested in her survival yet often critical of her behavior, while at the same time solidifying TLC's dependence on her as the cornerstone of the series' ongoing drama. Over 7 seasons, the pattern repeated. Amy's humorous or family-centered segments offered light moments, Amanda's fiery personality added flair, but Tammy's medical crises and emotional confrontations provided the suspense and cliffhanger necessary to keep audiences coming back. In that environment, it is no surprise that any rumor of Tammy leaving would trigger speculation about the show's ability to continue, and industry insiders have pointed out that without Tammy the structural integrity of the series may collapse. The rumors began in subtle ways. Tammy's absence from TLC's promotional content was noted by fans, especially since Amy and Amanda continued to post behind-the-scenes material on social media, while Tammy seemed curiously missing from joint marketing pushes. In the world of reality television, absence often signals either behind-the-scenes disputes or alternative commitments, and this case appears no different. Reports then began surfacing from reality TV blogs that Tammy was considering projects outside of TLC's control, and at first such claims were dismissed as speculation, because Tammy was under contract and subject to the restrictive clauses typical of TLC agreements. These contracts generally limit stars from working with competing networks, restrict their ability to profit independently from their fame, and can last years beyond initial filming. For Tammy to break free, she would either need to wait until contractual obligations expired or challenge the network through legal or financial means, neither of which is simple. However, leaks indicated that Tammy may already have been in negotiations for independent ventures, and if that is true, the implications are enormous, because industry, the migration of talent from traditional television to digital platforms where creative control and revenue sharing are more favorable. YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram allow direct-to-fan communication without intermediary editing, and stars who can harness these platforms often discover that their influence expands rather than diminishes outside of network television. Tammy already commands attention online, with millions of views on her TikTok content, and her health transformation has positioned her as a potential figure of inspiration rather than only a subject of ridicule. The opportunity to rebrand herself as a survivor, influencer, and even motivational speaker is real, particularly if she leverages partnerships with fitness or lifestyle brands. Such a pivot would represent a significant departure from her TLC image, which has been anchored in her role as the sister most resistant to progress. If she can demonstrate consistency and authenticity outside the show, her credibility as a public figure may grow. Nevertheless, challenges remain. Transitioning from being the subject of a network-driven narrative to controlling one's own brand requires planning, discipline, and business acumen. Tammy would need management, legal counsel, and marketing support to successfully build an independent platform. Rival networks or streaming services could provide that infrastructure in exchange for exclusive rights, but such deals may resemble the restrictive contracts she is trying to escape. Independence offers freedom, but also responsibility, and the extent to which Tammy is prepared for that remains uncertain. Observers note that she has already been active in producing content, reportedly filming documentary-style footage of her daily life without producer interference. If released on platforms like YouTube or even licensed to Netflix or Hulu, such content could provide a stark contrast to TLC's edited portrayal, allowing audiences to see the difference between the TV Tammy and the real Tammy. The impact of that could be significant, because viewers might reassess their judgments of her past behavior and shift blame toward network editing practices. TLC's strategy has always been to emphasize the extreme weight, extreme health risks, extreme conflict. In doing so, the network ensures drama that keeps audiences invested. But stars who outgrow the extreme labels often clash with this model, as seen in other TLC franchises where participants eventually rebelled against exploitative portrayals. Tammy's case illustrates this tension clearly. Her weight loss transformation, which should have been a triumphant resolution, has paradoxically reduced TLC's ability to market her as a constant source of crisis. A healthy, stable Tammy does not fit the template the network has built, which may explain why her absence from promotions coincided with speculation that she is moving in a new direction. The evolution of her personal life, combined with growing confidence online, has given her leverage that she lacked in earlier seasons. The potential consequences of Tammy leaving are substantial. Without her, TLC would need to elevate Amy, Amanda, or other family members to carry the narrative, but analysts doubt they could generate the same level of attention. Tammy's unpredictability, health scares, and raw emotional expressions have been the backbone of the show, and while fans enjoy Amy's comedic personality, it does not sustain suspense over multiple episodes in the same way. Amanda's fiery temper provides moments of entertainment, but not the sustained narrative arc Tammy provides. Thus, 1,000-pound sisters may face cancellation if Tammy departs, or at least a significant decline in viewership. Meanwhile, Tammy's willingness to risk this outcome suggests she no longer values the show as she once did. Reports indicate that she believes the program has devolved into what some describe as a circus, more focused on manufactured drama than authentic storytelling. If she truly views it this way, then leaving would not represent loss, but liberation. For TLC, however, it would be a major setback, not only financially but symbolically, as it would reinforce perceptions that the network exploits vulnerable individuals for profit. The legal dimension is worth exploring. If Tammy attempts to exit while under contract, TLC could pursue damages or injunctions to prevent her from releasing independent content. However, reality TV contracts have come under scrutiny in recent years, with calls for reform to provide greater protections for cast members. California, for instance, has laws limiting certain contract lengths and stipulations, and while TLC is headquartered elsewhere, similar principles may apply if legal action occurs. Public sympathy tends to favor individuals over corporations in such disputes, and Tammy could benefit from that dynamic. Furthermore, leaks of her low pay compared to TLC's profits could shift the narrative in her favor, painting her not as ungrateful but as undercompensated and exploited. Investigating fan response further reveals a divide. Some fans argue that TLC provided Tammy with a platform and resources that contributed to her survival and transformation, and therefore she owes the network loyalty. Others counter that while TLC may have offered exposure, it monetized her struggles disproportionately, leaving her with limited financial gain despite the risk to her health and dignity. This debate mirrors broader conversations about reality television ethics, particularly regarding participants who are not professional entertainers but ordinary people whose lives are thrust into public consumption. The possibility of Tammy joining a rival network or streaming platform raises competitive stakes. If she were to sign with a major streamer, TLC would not only lose her but face direct competition from a more polished, higher-budget version of her story. Viewers might flock to the new show, undermining TLC's ratings and potentially hastening the end of 1,000-pound sisters. For Tammy, such a move would be risky but potentially rewarding, as she would gain financial security and narrative control, though at the cost of entanglement with another large corporation. Ultimately, The trajectory of Tammy's career in 2025 will depend on how she balances her desire for independence with the realities of legal obligations and business demands. If she successfully navigates the transition, her case may serve as a precedent for other reality stars seeking autonomy, reshaping the industry by encouraging participants to assert greater control over their images. If she fails, either by succumbing to legal restrictions or struggling without network support, it will reinforce the cautionary tale that independence is not easily achieved. In sum, Tammy Slaton's rumored new career path represents more than just a personal choice. It is a potential turning point for reality television, highlighting tensions between networks and stars, questions of fair compensation, and the transformative power of digital platforms. Whether she ultimately succeeds in forging her own path remains to be seen, but the mere possibility has already unsettled TLC, mobilized fans, and prompted broader discussions about the future of the genre. The coming months will reveal whether Tammy becomes another cautionary tale of contractual entrapment or a rare example of a reality star who managed to rewrite her narrative on her own terms. Tammy Slaton's rumored career shift away from TLC and the structure of 1,000-pound sisters is not only a deeply personal move but also a lens through which we can study the mechanics of reality television, the economics of network versus talent power, and the recurring pattern of individuals seeking independence after finding themselves both defined and confined by the stories producers choose to tell. And while this might at first appear to be a singular case involving one star, the reality is that Tammy's potential departure highlights broader questions that the industry has been grappling with for years, particularly surrounding contracts, pay disparities, brand control, and the long-term welfare of those who become famous under conditions they did not fully understand when they signed their first agreements. And to explore this properly, one must not only track Tammy's trajectory but also compare it to a range of parallel case studies across TLC and the reality TV landscape to see how similar stories have played out and what they might signal for her future. Because if we start with Tammy, we see an individual who entered the reality TV ecosystem as someone vulnerable, battling significant health issues, whose narrative was marketed around crisis, extremity, and transformation, yet over time her personal growth and changing self-perception have collided with a network model that thrives on keeping her fixed in the role of the struggling, volatile sister whose setbacks drive ratings, and the contrast between her real-life progression and the television template has produced friction. But Tammy is not the first to experience this, because if we examine figures such as John and Kate Goslin from John and Kate +8, we find that once they sought to redefine themselves outside the TLC format, conflict ensued both legally and publicly, with lawsuits, countersuits, and intense media coverage that ultimately damaged both the network and the stars, yet also underscored how difficult it is for participants to extricate themselves from long-term contracts. And similarly with the Duggar family of 19 kids and counting, when scandal engulfed them, TLC cut ties abruptly, showing that while networks can drop participants to protect their brand, stars often cannot leave on their own terms without penalty, raising the stakes for Tammy as she reportedly considers independent ventures such as YouTube, TikTok, podcasting, and even rival streaming deals. Because if she pursues these without careful legal navigation, she may trigger the same kind of litigation that has plagued others. And at the same time, Tammy's concerns about financial fairness mirror those of other reality TV participants across franchises such as 90 Day Fiancé, where cast members have spoken publicly about earning as little as a few $1,000s for entire seasons, even while networks generate millions through ad sales, syndication, and international licensing, creating a financial gulf between production profits and cast compensation that fuels resentment and drives stars toward independence. And in Tammy's case, this economic imbalance is particularly acute given the high personal cost of her participation, which has involved invasive health coverage, hospitalization,